I'll be honest with you guys, way back in 2018, things were a lot simpler for me. I had a very straightforward routine back then. Wake up, get changed, go to college, come home, study, then chill out and watch YouTube for the rest of the day. Not very exciting, I know, but it was enough. I didn't have a lot going on back then. There was only a handful of things that would get me excited to catch up on or read or play, one of which, as you can guess, was watching 𝗃𝗪𝗡. 𝗃𝗪𝗡's videos were an effective distraction for me because over time, watching his silly videos became the norm. I found myself tuning in for almost every video the day it dropped. The one thing that I liked so much in regards to his videos was the consistency. Each video was just Mario, one of the biggest video game icons in history, going on silly adventures with his friends. Sure, it was dumb, but it was also fun to watch. Eventually, at a point, I concluded in my head that this is all that 𝗃𝗪𝗡 could possibly offer, and I was okay with that. I accepted that. Deep down, I wanted that. And could you guess why? Because a part of me was not ready for change. Oh cool, a new upload. Let's check it out. In this video, a certain blue-haired gamer girl that we've all come to know as Tari makes her debut in the 𝗃𝗪𝗡 video titled Mario the Ultimate Gamer. As mentioned in my first review, I didn't think much of Tari. She became a recurring character over time and seemed to be present whenever Mario was with the whole gang. She was pretty shy, timid, and an all-round pacifist when it came to standing up for herself. So, as I said, didn't think much of her. That is, until I saw this. Just seeing that teaser alone had me puzzled. Questions were clouding my mind. Questions like, what is this? Is this an animated short? Is this going to be the new series? Will this take over the old format? What is going on? I didn't like it. I couldn't accept it because I couldn't accept change. Every single episode that was released had a teaser right before the credits and it drove me insane. I tried to ignore it, but Luke and Kevin made it crystal clear that this is happening, whether I like it or not. The final episode of Medarunner's first season premiered, and after watching, I couldn't feel like more of an idiot. Medarunner is f***ing fantastic. I was a fool to not give this series a chance when I first laid my eyes on it. There's a whole bunch of things Medarunner seasons 1, 2, and even 3 does extraordinarily well. The story of Medarunner revolves around Tari, not 𝗃𝗪𝗡 Tari, but instead this older, mature looking variant of Tari. Along with this comes a whole new world to explore and new characters to delve into. Glitch has separated itself from the 𝗃𝗪𝗡 channel and is embracing several creative directions such as Sunset Paradise and Murder Drones, with Medarunner being its biggest accomplishment thus far. Accepting change can be difficult, but sometimes it can work out for the better. Medarunner was exactly the push 𝗃𝗪𝗡/Glitch needed to boost creativity in their content and deliver some quality entertainment. With that being said, Medarunner has been concluded and it only seems logical that I should share my thoughts on this final season. And spoiler alert, I've got some mixed feelings. But before we begin, there's something else I need to bring to your attention. If you're a subscriber of mine that looks forward to my upcoming content, you'll know that making these types of videos does take quite some time. But on the flip side, between videos, I'm quite social and I like to think that I inform people of what's going on with each video that I'm working on. And there's two ways I go about doing that. One is through Twitter. Yeah, I have a Twitter. And it would mean a lot to me if you guys could follow me over there at @RayToshi_, if and only if you enjoyed the video and you want to hear more from me. The second, which is completely optional, is through Patreon. I set this up a while ago and I haven't had a member since, so it would mean the absolute world to me if one of you could become my first ever Patreon. And the cost? Well, it literally only costs you $1, pound, euro, whatever currency you use. Of course, there's another tier if you're interested, but I encourage new patrons to go for the £1 tier. That's all I ask. Now, let's get back to talking about Medarunner, shall we? August 25th, 2018. The day that Tari, everybody's favorite, shy, socially awkward girl with a passion for video games, was introduced to the public. It's no surprise at all that she definitely started to grow in audiences, and as the years went by, we started to get more details on the character. 𝐃𝐈𝐒𝐂𝐋𝐀𝐈𝐌 made a special video going through the process of creating Tari, from the early stages to the final design. You know, it's crazy to think that the very concept of Tari was conjured up by the mind of 𝐃𝐈𝐒𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿 younger sister, who went all out on the different looks and variations of the cyborg girl. Later down the line, Luke and Kevin hired Jared, Glitch Productions concept artist, who then worked on the OG version of Tari, turning her more human-like, which not only gave her look that relatability that it desperately needed, but also nailing that final design. However, the guys over at Glitch and SMG4 wanted to make these characters separate from each other. Nothing that happens in the SMG4 canon will show up in MetaRunner and vice versa. So we got two Taris in each respective universe. That way, hopefully, viewers won't get too confused when watching MetaRunner. This part was just a little joke, there's definitely no connection there, ignore this. When the show made its way to the wide world of the internet through teasers and trailers, you could see the ambition and excitement just radiating off Luke and Kevin. This was their first spin on an animated show. As they've mentioned when talking about MetaRunner, a lot of time, effort and funding went into MetaRunner, and I'm not even just talking about season 1. Season 2 saw a massive upgrade with the animation, and the cast extended by a few extra people as well. From then onwards, things were looking great for the series. The fans accepted it with open arms, and this new version of Tari. The mystery of the show and the exploration of Tari's character were the biggest hooks for MetaRunner, along with impressive animation that complemented various moments in the series. It was all looking great. I've seen firsthand the impact this show has made on thousands of people, cosplayers, animators, and even people who take inspiration for their own storytelling. MetaRunner has truly touched many people in various ways. There was a collab video that I was a part of, and it had people talking all about how much of an impact MetaRunner has had on them especially. They spoke about how this series has flourished over the years, the jump in quality, the lovable characters, and the overall creative potential the series had. Seeing the evolution of not only MetaRunner but also Tari was something inspiring in itself. She has changed so much over the years, adapting and evolving into the best version that Glitch envisioned for her. From her small robotic frame to her fully grown developed human form, it just shows how much time, care, effort, and passion has gone into the evolution stages of Tari. I also love how SMG4 fully went and made an entire video having both Taris from different universes crossover for a special non-canon wacky episode. Seeing these two finally interact was a dream come true, and there were even a few more surprises that popped up as well. But now that we've covered the creation of Tari, it's time to go over the general impression this final season has left on me. So I'm just gonna come out and say this. In my personal opinion, this final season was far from perfect, and I refuse to sit here and be biased and gaslight anyone by saying it is, because it's not. It's not quote unquote perfect, but that's not to say it's not good. Nah, it's really good, great in fact. There are honestly some really standout moments in this final season. I can say confidently that in each category, or should I say aspect, there's something good to talk about, while on the other hand, there's always that one thing that's missing. That, I can say, is this season's biggest flaw. It focuses on one thing really well while missing out on others which needs addressing. This is also something I really need to call out, since at this point in time, these sort of issues really shouldn't be present. If I could summarize how I feel about how they handled everything, especially in the latter half of this season, into one single statement, I would have to say that with some of their choices, they played it a little too safe. By all means, I wouldn't mind elaborating, but I'd rather save that for a later chapter in this video. So let's just leave it at that for now. In a roundabout way, I really did enjoy this season since it had a steady start and things were running pretty smooth. I loved how every episode had me engaged, some more than others, but I can't say that I lost interest or felt bored, which is great and all, besides one small thing: the runtime. I understand not every episode can be half an hour long, but most of the time after every episode I found myself saying, oh, it's finished. So you can hear the surprise in my voice followed up by the disappointment, because they love to give us a taste of the good stuff before cutting the episode. Overall, I do feel like this is the weakest season, but here's the thing. I can understand how wrapping things up in a full circle with no loose ends can be a little difficult, especially since this is your final season and it's technically only your third season. But the grey areas are really hard to ignore at times, and I just can't help but wonder what could have been different. On the plus side, there was something I was really impressed with, and that was the music / soundtrack in this season. I think they did really well in the music department on this one. When paying attention to the background music, you can start to hear the subtle details in various scenes that I think go unnoticed by most viewers. Some music ties scenes really well together. Whether it's a somber moment or a tragic moment, it fits in really well. Last I checked, 2 new songs were dropped in this new season. Blue Jay, performed by Liz Robinette, and Trade, done by both Liz and the GOAT Matthew Guerrero. 2 songs that I've really enjoyed listening to. Recently there was a Goodbye Metarunner concert where all the musicians and singers live streamed themselves performing every opening and ending song in Metarunner, and it honestly had me blown away. I was genuinely impressed that Glitch had hired all these musicians and singers, and can you blame me? I've only ever seen what pretty much everyone else has seen, surface level footage of Glitch Productions HQ with all their animators. I never thought for a second that the soundtrack would be something of this magnitude. So with that being said, let's move on to the next chapter, which will be covering the story. The story picks up exactly 1 week after the events of season 2, with the MD5 on the run from the police while also being imprisoned by Marco, the one-time minor antagonist from season 2. Meanwhile, Belle and Master have been captured by the presumed dead Dr. Sheridan, who reveals himself to being the mastermind behind Lux's untimely death. With her friends captured and Lucinia supposedly still under, Tari takes it upon herself to take action and rescue her friends along with the help of Theo, Lamar, and Sophia. But this soon proves to be difficult, with Sheridan controlling Lucinia with the help of Evelyn, who now has acquired Tari's Metarunner vision along with her warping abilities. Tari is faced with one of her toughest challenges yet, with not only being hunted, but coming to terms with her unavoidable fate. So that's the basic rundown of Metarunner the final season. Throughout this season, there are several moments where the story goes from okay, standard stuff, to really good. The writing for the most part in these instances was done really well, because these moments highlight significant points in the character's progression. To name a few, the big reveal with Sheridan being alive and how much he's taken over from Lux. What was once Task where only the best Metarunners thrive, is now ShareCorp, a cheap knockoff with a tyrannical CEO as the face of the company. Another example was these fun little action scenes in Skybreakers, with MD5 looking for ways into Sheridan's backdoor server, with a reference to a very old yet iconic gaming moment that made history on the web.
Alright, chums up. Ready, guys? Let's do this. Leroy Dragons!
Oh my god, he just ran in.
Save him! Oh geez, stick to the plane!
Oh Jesus, let's go.
And its final example where it's revealed some internal conflict within a character, Master's nightmare sequence. The way it was animated was so trippy, it was almost terrifying. Of course, there are many other highlights in the story, but these were the ones that stood out to me and that I could honestly think of from the top of my head. I'm quite interested to hear what you guys have to say in regards to these, so let me know in the comments what in season 3's story would you consider a highlight. But before we move on to the next chapter, there was one last thing I needed to talk about in regards to the storytelling, and this is quite essential when it comes to laying out your story per episode. That's right, pacing. Pacing is such an integral part of storytelling so that the viewers are able to keep up with your story, but also things like character interaction and a well-balanced narrative. Pacing in the final season was okay at times, but at others it definitely needed some work. From episode 3 onwards, we have the Skybreakers section, and while it was fun to see for the first time, I couldn't help but feel like things were moving a little slow at times. I don't think it's completely a bad thing, but if you were to think about the repercussions of this, you'll soon come to realize that all this time spent on things that aren't really that important could be spent on things that desperately need that screen time, something that's also integral to the story, something like, oh, I don't know, Alright boys and girls, grab a drink, snack if you wish, and get comfortable because I got a lot to say about the characters. First off, I'll get this off my chest. I think the representation of each character who played a role, big or small, was done pretty well. For better or worse, some of these characters that inhabit the story are basically the same as they once were in previous seasons. I didn't expect too much development in regards to their respective motivations, but I did, however, expect everyone to have their quote-unquote moment. There were definitely some characters that stood out more in this final season than others, and the gap is very noticeable. Some of them had things to do while others barely had anything to work with, which left me very mixed on the whole thing. So in this section, I'm hoping to convey as clearly as I can how I felt about each character in this final season. So let's go through basically everyone, starting off with our main protagonist, Tari. Everybody's favorite kind-hearted blue-haired gamer girl is back, and the character of Tari has grown quite a bit over the past 2 seasons. She has more of a rock-solid personality and has definitely matured. Glitch once tweeted out a tease of Tari's character growth, labeling how she's no longer the timid, shy girl she was in season 1, and they were absolutely right. In this season, we see Tari actively advancing the plot, instead of being pushed by it like in season 1 and parts of season 2. She was the driving force that holds MD5 together since Master's a little preoccupied right now, and it seems like she's truly embracing the role as the main character, taking charge at times, standing up for herself, and no longer being afraid to get her hands dirty. I mean, she fully punched Evelyn in the face at one moment. How much more badass can you get?
Sir, Tari is escaping.
The what?
Falcon punch!
There are also really good character moments for her, like when she loses her meta runner vision. She has to rely on raw skill instead of using her abilities, and that was something she had to overcome before the final confrontation. Tari was written excellently in this final season, which was to be expected since this is the end for the character, so I was thoroughly impressed with what they did with her. She has definitely earned her spot back as the MVP of this season. Next is Theo. I felt like Theo was a lot more tolerable in this season. He certainly wasn't as annoying as he was in the past seasons, and he did bring some sort of seriousness to this final outing. I like what the voice actress for Theo has done with her voice by making it a lot deeper. He came across a lot more mature and grown up. There were some really good comedic moments here and there, and we got some internal conflict with him too. Ever since he left his game cartridge, he's been glitching. In other words, he's slowly dying the more he stays in the real world, and it slowly starts to occur more frequently. But he decides to keep quiet about it to not worry Tari, so that the team can focus on the objective. His drive throughout the season was a commendable one, and it certainly made me see him in a better light than before. Theo was pretty darn good all the way up to his final moment, and I can confidently say that I like what it did with Theo in this season. Up next is Sophia, and I really don't have much to say about her besides that she's a really fun, eccentric, comedic supporting character. I wouldn't go as far to say she's boring, but there really isn't a lot going on with her character. She's just as interesting as she was in the previous 2 seasons, and nothing much has changed. We did, however, learn more about her past in the low tier working under Marco. She used to do some real shady stuff like harvesting meta runner arms, and I feel like if we were given more time with this character, we could have delved deeper into that. But this small piece of information was more of a throwaway line that was followed up by a comedic moment and was never mentioned again. So you can see my disappointment with that. For me, this line was no more than just a tease, but to others like a certain theory YouTuber, it's worth making multiple videos on, so I guess that answers that. Overall, Sophia is just kind of there, typing away on her computer and cracking jokes most of the time, so I can't really see her as anything more than that. Oh, 𝐶𝗪, I've been itching to talk about you. It's quite impressive and shocking at the same time how Glitch was able to create such a lovable character, and yet over the span of 3 seasons have zero backstory for him. This is one of the biggest issues that's holding him back from being a fleshed out character. It's kind of frustrating how we know so little about this guy when it's established that he was recruited by Master back in the early days and has been around ever since. As a character, 𝗲𝗪 is excellent, funny and supporting, but unfortunately that is all there is to him. From season 1 all the way to season 3, 𝗲𝗪 has just stayed the same person he was when he was first introduced. There were so many moments where we could have gotten some more insight on 𝗲𝗪, and admittedly we did get one moment in episode 5. I became a meta runner when I joined up with MD5, so then Evelyn responds mockingly, "What's wrong? Couldn't hack it in the big leagues?" To which 𝗲𝗪 counters with, "Nah, never wanted to. Growing up, I saw what they did to people who ain't useful no more. This is probably the closest we've ever gotten to a backstory for Lamar, and by all means, yes, the way it fits into the scene works, but I feel like the payoff would have been better if things were a little different. Instead, he could perhaps be opening up to Tari or Marco about his past, instead of revealing it to a walking vegetable who can barely talk and a purple gremlin who couldn't give a shit. I wish things were different with Lamar, that's all I can say. But overall, to some extent, yes, he was yet another fun character to watch. Belle. Another character who just didn't do much this season, and it's a shame because she had a whole character arc in season 2. She had something to work with, something to overcome. Heck, she was the best character in season 2 in my opinion, but just like 𝗲𝗧, she takes a massive backseat. This is probably going to be a short one, which is disappointing since she is in fact my favorite character, but she really just didn't do anything to stand out at all in this season. Her motivation to free Lucinia was there, that's good, but actively, Belle's character went to waste. At least on the flip side, she did get to share a nice kiss with Lucinia, which confirmed that they're a couple, so yeah, I'm happy for her. I've got a bit of a mixed opinion on 𝗲𝗧. 𝗲𝗧 is a really good character, there's no denying that. His edginess, his broad and stoic personality, he's very interesting. The sort of things this man has been through throughout this series is definitely traumatizing to say the least. In this season, especially in a particular moment, we jump right into that and see what exactly is going on up in that head of his, and it's not pretty. However, this tells us so much about 𝗲𝗧 and how he handles his trauma. Seeing an emotionally broken and vulnerable 𝗲𝗧 was so fascinating to watch. I couldn't get enough of it, and not because I thrive off of his suffering, but because it shows a newer side to 𝗲𝗧, a side which we've never seen before, where he's not always the calm and collected leader that he makes himself out to be. The guilt that eats away at him was shown through multiple characters in this nightmare sequence, which was definitely disturbing. But besides from that brilliant moment and one other, 𝗲𝗧 is very inactive during this season, just like Belle. He is yet another character who had something to do in the past seasons and has now taken a back seat in order for Tari to take center stage, and I'm not even surprised at this point. Some of the choices made with 𝗲𝗧 this season were interesting, but there was one that left me speechless, but I'll save that for another chapter. I must admit, Marco was a fine addition to the cast of MetaRunner and MD5 as a whole. Suspicion was going around that Marco had an ulterior motive and that he was going to betray everyone at the end, probably because it was unclear at first whose side Marco was really on. But soon Marco pretty much warmed up to the rest of the gang and joined their fight against Sheridan. I can't not like Marco. His personality, his ideals, his rivalry with 𝗲𝗧, all interesting aspects of his character which makes him really stand out from the crowd. Also, can't forget his mustache. It's truly a work of art. Speaking of 𝗲𝗧, this was something that the writing heavily leaned into, as if it's this big plot point that will be important later, but I couldn't help but call its bluff. I never once believed that this character would be the vengeful type, even though it was heavily implied. The reason being is that at the end of the day, if Marco were to get his hands on 𝗲𝗧, I don't believe he would kill him. He would probably humiliate him like how he humiliated Marco back in season 2. To be honest, I see Marco as this big grumpy guy who's a good person deep down and would do anything to protect his own. I certainly got that vibe, especially when he was with MD5. There were some wholesome moments with the group, and I really loved the dynamic Marco brings to the team. Tari is kind of like the leader of the group, Lamar is like the supportive middle brother, Marco is the grumpy older brother, and Theo is the loud, energetic younger brother. It's like a little family, and I'm definitely gonna miss seeing this. I feel like I've come to understand Lucinia a little better in this final season. I may not have found her all that interesting or cared much for her, but I understand her significance to the characters around her, to Belle, to Sophia, and of course Tari. There's a prequel comic out that explains Lucinia's backstory, and I haven't read it, I doubt I ever will, but apparently it goes into detail about her character before the events of MetaRunner. So if you want, I can leave you a link to get your copy in the description. Other than that, let's move on. I still remember my reaction to seeing AI 𝗧𝗪𝗏 for the first time and thinking, oh my god, what? How is he alive? For it then to be revealed that it's only an AI of Lux, and that was a little disappointing, but it made sense. Lux's character throughout the series was more than just your average antagonist. He's a little bit like Sheridan in this season. They don't see themselves as villains, they're just doing what they think is best for the company and all of Silica City, kind of. It's a little more complicated with Sheridan, but we'll get to that later. Lux had a moment in season 2 that had me thinking twice about his character, only for him to die unexpectedly. But as for season 3, a nice little moment was when the AI Lux showed some signs of being sentient, and towards the end even helped Tari in his final moments. It was like a quick redemption moment for him, one final good deed before dying for good this time. It was honestly kind of nice to see. I absolutely loved Evelyn in this season. Along with Sheridan, she really took to the mantle of a straight up antagonist in this season. Her hatred for Tari was her sole motivation, and it was more than enough. She can really hold her own when it comes to facing MD5. Along with her meta runner abilities, she served as a worthy opponent for Tari in the final episodes. She even went as far as permanently scarring her face just to get a taste of power, which just made her character all the more convincing. I already went into depth about the relatability of her character in my season 2 review, but her reasoning for going this far is out of pure spite, and I've stopped feeling sorry for her and just mentally said, screw it, you do you, let's see how this ends. And then as expected, it turned out the way I predicted. And finally, we have Sheridan, main antagonist of this final season. To describe Sheridan in simple terms, it would be easy. He's eccentric, he's quirky, he's maniacal, he's twisted, he's a lot of things, but never would I think that a part of him would be both sympathetic yet irredeemable. Dr. James Sheridan's story starts off like how any other unappreciated scientist would. James had a dream to create an AI to help meta runners surpass their limits. But things went horribly wrong, and his project was not only shut down but also a success, only to have that success be taken away from him as well. Sheridan is a well and truly broken and mentally unstable character whose life dream got snatched from him. In this season, he fully embraces the villain inside of him, since he vows to never let someone else take credit for his work again. I think having Sheridan be the main antagonist was the right choice. It fits in well with the story, his motivation is strong, and throughout the episodes, you see how he slowly descends into madness that there's no coming back from. A very fun, twisted individual for the series, and he really stole the show whenever he was on screen. I think that about covers everything I had to say. Some were a little more fleshed out than others, and there are some really great moments for each character's respective arc. Not everyone got their perfect conclusion, but they all had a pretty good run. What else can I say that I possibly haven't said already? Although Meta Runner's final season is the weakest out of the 3, it certainly isn't in regards to the animation and action. This season was easily the most action-packed, with the majority of it taking place in Skybreakers. Skybreakers was a fine addition to the world of Meta Runner, introducing this RPG-style pirate game, which saw Tari take on a new simplistic look, complemented by the bright and colourful background. I would describe this as Sea of Thieves meets Sunset Paradise. I won't deny that I really love the creativity put into Skybreakers, the choreographed fights and all the character looks and designs, but back in the real world things pretty much look the same, but a little more refined. I noticed subtle things like facial movements, model refinement, reflections, and honestly the list goes on. All in all, I was thoroughly happy with how things looked. Yeah, at times the movement can look a little stiff, but it was hardly noticeable. Oh, one other thing, and this is something I picked up on. Glitch likes to make these references and callbacks to popular movies and memes, two of which I caught on to. One being a very obvious reference to the creepy 2009 kids film Coraline, and another taking inspiration from a scene from Marvel Studios' Thor Ragnarok. It was really sly, yet smart on Glitch's part, and I gotta give them credit for taking their own spin on it. One last thing I'd like to discuss is the writing for this season. Having some good writing alone isn't enough to make a good series, but it's still very important. Fleshing out your characters and including some memorable moments was something this season needed to accomplish, and in some ways it did just that. There are certainly several comedic moments, emotional moments, and all-round action-packed moments that serves as eye candy for the viewers. Although I already discussed the characters and how they were handled, I avoided going into detail about the creative choices done for one character and one other scene. But first, let's go over some other stuff. Remember how I mentioned that Glitch likes to have certain little teasers in their work? Well, this season was full of them, and I like how the writing fits them in. For example, when the meta runners of Silica City were warped into Sheridan's server, it was a mad scramble for survival. They had to use weapons and vehicles from games shown in the past seasons. We even got to see Tari using her old Tempest spells. That was a really nice callback. One other thing was comedic moments. While the majority of the season maintained this serious tone thanks to the writing, there was also time for light moments between the characters to let us breathe and take in what's happened and what's going on. I believe every character had their moment, but I'd like to just highlight the additional voices in this season. What I'm referring to are the bystanders in the background, reacting to everything as it unfolds. And yeah, you can say it's just Kevin and Luke self-inserting into the series, but they also got other people's reactions and their lines were really relatable, mostly in the comedic sense. With the way this was written, it didn't distract me too much, it was quick and funny, and I really liked having it there. So now let's move over to the emotional side of things, because here I'm a little mixed. The writing did get some points here, but not full marks, if that makes any sense. Starting off with Belle and Lucinia's reveal. Over the past 2 seasons, the writing for this pair didn't do a well-rounded job setting these two up as a couple. Admittingly, season 1, Belle would avoid talking about Lucinia. In season 2, she was a little more defensive on the topic, but you can see that they were close. But the reveal in season 3 was very surprising and caught me off guard. It had a good payoff because the scene felt very nice and wholesome. I just thought the setup to this was a little weak. Another moment was with Sophia and Lucinia when they reunite. Now, I don't blame the writing too much for this underwhelming scene, because in reality, this was the final few minutes of the season and also time constraints. But their reunion felt a little lackluster for me. The voice actors gave it their best, but the lines just weren't all that convincing and fell flat in my opinion. Master's survival was a big question mark for me. Throughout this season, there were heavy implications that Master could be another character that would die. The nightmare sequence didn't do him any favors, and that scene with Sheridan just didn't add up. You're telling me after this guy got stabbed in the neck with a screwdriver, which should have definitely punctured an artery, causing him to indefinitely bleed out, and his head overloading and exploding, this guy is still alive? How? There's just no way any normal being would have died from the screwdriver alone. But the fact that he just gets up like he's just woken up from an uncomfortable nap just makes no sense. The plot armor is strong with Master, good lord. Lastly, we have Tari's final goodbye scene with Thea. Yes, it's a little sad, but I feel like it could have been sadder? Sadder? That's a word, right? Sadder. Anyway, this last bit felt like more of a see you next time rather than a goodbye forever. I just didn't feel as sad as I wanted to be, so instead I came up with my own version. In my version, we can still have Theo and Tari together in the server, but instead we cut out all of this stuff about the video games. That's not gonna happen. Instead, it's just them. They briefly talk to each other about MD5 and how much they'll miss everyone, and once that's all said and done, they look at each other and smile. Tari asks, "You ready to go?" And Thea responds with, "Yeah, I'm ready." Tari glances at the audience as if she's breaking the fourth wall and smiles. She then turns back as her and Thea walk off into the distance, slowly fading until nothing. The end. That's how I would have done it, at least. But I guess what we got wasn't all that bad. And it was a really nice, wholesome way to finish off the series. And I don't mean for this section to sound like I'm undermining the work put into this season. I just think some things could have been better. That's all. So here we are, the final chapter. For those of you who are still watching, I'm sorry if this large review of mine has sounded mostly negative. It's not my intention to bash this final season in any way. When making something for the world to see, it's common knowledge that you are not going to satisfy everyone. People will love it, and that's great for them, but there will also be people who will look at it with more of a critical eye and bring to light its flaws. Having that balance is key, so that the people who work on this can learn and see what they've missed and know where to to improve upon. In a way, the series Meta Runner has learned from the past and has definitely embraced change. A good example of this is the animation from season 1 to 2. When seeing the massive improvement in season 2, it made me very happy to see Glitch going above and beyond. It was as if the crew told themselves, we can do better. And they certainly did. Not just for the animation, but also for the theme of Meta Runner. It wasn't clear at first, but I actually kind of get it now. The theme of Meta Runner is about discovery, but also about acceptance. For the main protagonist Tari, it's all about discovering who she is and what it's like to have people around whom you can call your friends, maybe even family. But it's also about facing problems and setbacks in life, no matter how big they are, and accepting them. Acceptance of who she is and what she needs to overcome to protect those she cares for. That's the theme. That is Tari's journey. While it's sad to see the series go, the series that started it all, I am very much looking forward to the future. Glitch has proved time and time again that they have loads more ideas waiting to come out the woodwork, and that gets me very, very excited to see what comes next. And with that, we're finished. That's it. No more Meta Runner. That was a lot of talking, but I really hope you enjoyed the video and you liked this panel review for Meta Runner. I spent days working on this and making it the best it could possibly be, and it would mean a lot to me if you guys could repay the favor by liking and commenting what you think. Saying goodbye to Meta Runner was hard, but we made it. So thank you for everything, Meta Runner, and thank you guys for watching. And hopefully, I'll see you real soon. Take care now.